Ready to be podsmacked? Now, here's Rob Carson.
Hello, it's me, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you here today. We are well into the holiday season, Christmas season, Hanukkah season, Kwanzaa season. Hanukkah is great, yeah, and Christmas is great, and Kwanzaa is great for those who celebrate it. I guess all three of you. Anyway, welcome to the show. We have a couple of things going on. I'm actually doing two shows tonight. One more focused on Christmas and fun, and one a little bit more on politics. This one is about politics. This one's going to be about the George Bush funeral and the funeral of a president has always been very. I mean, it's a big event. It's a big event. The first one I remember, I'm trying to remember. Well, obviously, Reagan happened when I was in D.C. That was a big deal. I was not alive for Kennedy's funeral. But the funeral of a president is a big deal, regardless of the circumstances. George H.W. Bush passed away. He's 94 years old. He lived a glorious life. Changed the world in many ways. And you know what? I was a little disappointed, honestly, because I did post some social media stuff on Spreely.com, SPREELY.com, which is a new alternative to Facebook that has been put together by my friend Terry Littlepage. And you should become a member, by the way. But I was very disappointed by the vitriol associated with George W. Bush's, H.W. Bush's funeral. It was very negative. It was really, 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 really negative. I guess the first presidential funeral that I really remember would probably be Nixon. And I was like in my 30s. So, because it was Nixon, Ford. It was Ford, and that was when I was in my 30s too. Maybe even in the early 40s. Carter's still around. Clinton's still around. Obviously, Obama's still around. So yeah, I didn't really start experiencing and remembering presidential funerals until then. I really wasn't old enough to remember Johnson's funeral. I don't remember that. But anyway, that aside, George H.W. Bush's funeral happened, and it's remarkable to me because he was savaged by the media. And I remember this because I write political satire, and I have for many years, and have observed many administrations. The first real, I guess, experience that I had writing political satire was with Rush Limbaugh when George H.W. Bush was the president, and he was destroyed. He was a whip. He was a wimp. He was a wimp. That was it. George H.W. Bush was a wimp. Now, of all the people you can imagine who are wimps, if you look at the grand scheme of things, World War II veteran, shot down CIA director, vice president. I mean, just numerous jobs that he had, created essentially a political empire, raised some kids very successfully. Not exactly a wimp. George Herbert Walker Bush was not a wimp. We may disagree with some of his politics. And I remember the big thing is the no new taxes. That's read my lips, no new taxes. George W. Bush was threatened with a government shutdown. And he was forced to, by the Democrats at the time, raise taxes. Now, here's the thing that is, to me, and maybe... maybe I'm the only person who it's not known. He said no new taxes. There were no new taxes. There were no new taxes during his administration. There weren't. There was not a new tax on televisions. There was not a new tax on whatever. Did he have to go along with the Democrats because he had his arm twisted behind his back and raise taxes? Yes, he did. But there were no new taxes. He said no new taxes. The promise that he made was kept. But, of course, he was destroyed because of it. We're going to get into the George Bush funeral here in a few. And I know that sounds morbid, but it's not. It's not. All of us should wish to be 94 years old and have the experience on the planet that this man did. Few of us will succeed at that. And that's okay. But he lived an extraordinary life. He did. Extraordinary life. An extraordinary life. We all live those lives. We all live lives. And in many ways, they are all extraordinary. Some people are complete douches. Some people are awesome. Some people make a lot of difference in other people's lives. Some people are selfish. I'm going to wax philosophical. None of us are given a choice when we're born. We're just born. We are thrust into consciousness, and not soon thereafter, we have to confront the possibility of our mortality. It's a terrible thing. It's an awful thing to live with. But you've got to live beyond that. You've got to live your life beyond that. And eventually, you have to realize that it's going to happen. When you're in your 20s, you don't think about it. When you're in your 30s, maybe a little. 40s, 50s. Whoa. More life behind me than ahead of me. Unless I'm going to live to be 110 years old. I mean, it happens. And it happens. So we do our very best to make the most of our time on the planet. In a big or small way. I'm going to get into the funeral of George W. Bush in a few minutes, okay? Let's do that. I want to talk a little bit about the Paris Climate Accord. Donald Trump said, "Nah, we're not going to do the Paris Climate Accord. We're going to pull out of it because it was a joke. Because it is the ultimate in socialism, in bringing down the leaders of the world, not raising the boats of third world countries, but bringing down those who are successful. This is what socialism is all about. It's about equalizing the playing field. Okay, it is about taking those who make a lot and are successful and bringing them here, rather than taking those who are failures. And sorry, there are failures in the world. We live in the year 2018, and there are still failures in the world. I hate to tell you this. There's a thing called third world countries, and they exist because they fail and they suck. All right? They do. They are asshole countries, like Donald Trump said. There are asshole countries, and sorry, there are, for a variety of reasons, mostly because of leadership. But the Paris Climate Accord was meant to punish the successful nations of the world and not raise the boats of those who are failed because they suck. Okay? I'm just going to be honest. And so, President of France, Emile Macron. Oh, I know. I've got French friends. I speak French. He bought into this Paris Accord, Emmanuel Macron. And one of the things that was going to happen was the gas tax was going to go through the ceiling, and gas was going to cost. And $9 a gallon is what I heard. Not true. It's like $9 a liter for gas. Okay, so gas is prohibitively expensive. Now, you think about this. 20-gallon tank in the United States is $140 per fill-up. Can you imagine $120 or $140 per fill-up for your car in the United States? Would that cause a little bit of a problem? Well, it has in France. And I believe it's more than $7 a gallon. It's more than that. That said, there are a group of people who are saying that they're going to fight this, okay? They are going to stop this from happening. Now, you think that the French people are all down with this whole socialism / green energy / Paris Climate Accord thing? Well, guess what? No matter where you live, eventually people are going to get fed up with it. They're going to get fed up with it. And they're going to go, you know what? I can't afford this. I got to feed my family, and I got to drive to work. And I got to drive to work. And I got to tell you, France, if you look at a map of the world, if you look at the entire expanse of the world, 25,000 miles around, blah, 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 all the square footage, France is a fingernail clipping. It is. And France, their contribution to global warming is D word for Richard. Okay? So all this exists is just to punish the French people because Emmanuel Macron, who drives to work to and fro in a limousine motorcade and flies on private jets, he feels like Al Gore and other Americans feel that you should live with less. Here's a little story about, and I believe this is from CNN. It might be from the AP. With regard to the new French Revolution about green energy and the Paris Climate Accord.
C'est tout, monsieur. This is a revolution? Révolution, c'est une révolution. How does the revolution end? How does the revolution... Oui, c'est le commencement de la révolution. C'est le commencement.
Usually in France, the revolution ends with a guillotine. I don't know about this one. I hope not.
C'est le commencement. On va se révolter, ça s'arrêtera jamais. Je passerai Noël dehors, je passerai le jour de l'an dehors. Mais les Gaulois, ils sont là, on s'arrêtera jamais.
Not exactly sure exactly what he said, even though I was a French major in college. But basically said, we're sick and damn tired of this sort of crap. Basically. Protesters said that the start of a revolution that would eclipse the mass strikes and occupation of universities and factories in 1968 when the country was on the cusp of a civil war. And I don't doubt this. They're tired of it. Emmanuel Macron has like a 20% approval rating. The yellow vest protest is what they're calling this because people are wearing yellow vests. Okay. Macron said demonstrations which have left dozens injured and hundreds arrested have nothing to do with a peaceful expression of legitimate anger. He said no cause justifies attacks on police or pillaging stores and burning buildings. Kind of what's happening here in our country, right? It is. It's happening with the Antifa. The Antifa. Let's move on and talk about George H.W. Bush. And I'm not going to try and, he was a good guy. I mean, he was a good guy. He led an exemplary life. He led a really good life, okay? He just did. I disagree with his politics, and I did on most occasions disagree on his politics. But my gosh, he was a pretty cool guy. He loved his wife. He raised a great family. And you know what? Get over yourself if you hate him. And you know, if you want to spew hate about George H.W. Bush, then do it on your own time. I don't have time for this crap. But I'm going to just mention a couple things about this man. One of the things that I learned about George H.W. Bush, should not come as a surprise, was that he treated his Secret Service agents very well. So did George W. Bush. So does Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton was a complete something word to Secret Service. That's just the way she is. She's an awful person. Got some news on their world tour, the stadium tour of Bill and Hillary coming up. Tickets selling for $7 rather than $700. George Bush would have Christmas in Washington, D.C. at the White House. Do you know why? Because he knew his Secret Service members lived there and would want to spend Christmas with their families. That's what they did. Secret Service agent William Albrecht worked with him. George H.W. Bush was codenamed Timberwolf. He was on the midnight shift at the vice president's residence. And he also, I'm trying to get, this is a story from the UK Daily Mail, so pardon me if I don't have it exactly right. Okay, aside from that, this, I believe, was in the White House. Yeah, this is the White House. This is the White House. Okay. So he was assigned to the basement post at 3 a.m., this Secret Service agent, Albrecht, getting hungry. Never had permission to take food from the kitchen of the White House, but sometimes you get very hungry on midnights. Walked into the kitchen that was located in the basement and opened up the refrigerator. I'm hoping that there are some leftover snacks from that day's reception. It was slim pickings. All of a sudden, there's a voice over my shoulder. Hey, anything good in there to eat? Albrecht says, nah, looks like they've been cleaned out. Turned around to see George Bush on his right shoulder. After I got over the shock of who it was, Bush says, hey, I was really hoping there would be something to eat. And Albrecht said, well, sir, every day the stewards bake cookies, but every night they hide them from us. With a wink of his eye, the president said, let's find him. Tore the kitchen apart. Sure enough, they found him. Took a stack of chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk and went back up to bed. Secret Service agent took a stack and a glass of milk and went back to the basement post. When Albrecht returned to his post, other Secret Service agent said, who the hell were you talking to? Albrecht said, I was talking to the president. The other Secret Service agent, all right. Agents noted the contrast between George H.W. Bush and Al Gore, one of Bush's successors as vice president. Oh, this was in the vice president residence, pardon me. Like Hillary Clinton, Gore, who also claimed to be a champion of the little people, treated agents with disdain and told them he did not want to be bothered greeting or seeing them. This is the vice president. This is Democrats. These are leftists. Gore told agents at his home in Carthage, Tennessee, they should duck behind bushes when they rotated shifts because the Gores didn't want to see them. Former Secret Service agent Jeff Crane says, I was on the detail one Christmas when Gore was at his home in Carthage. Neighbors offered us food on Christmas Day, but the Gores never even bothered to say Merry Christmas or thank you. Hillary Clinton, who continues to be protected by the Secret Service as a spouse of a former president, is so nasty to her agents that being assigned to her detail is considered by agents to be a form of punishment and the worst duty assignment in the Secret Service. Like Bush, President Trump treats his agents with respect and consideration. Sitting on the sofa overlooking the main Mar-a-Lago pool 4 days before a recent New Year's Eve party there, this Secret Service agent said, I asked Trump how he likes being protected by Secret Service agents. He says it's great. I have agents all around me as I'm playing golf, and they are all looking different directions, so when they miss a shot, they don't see it. Pretty interesting stuff. Let's move on. Bob Dole. He's in his 90s now. He's still alive. Many of you remember Bob Dole when he ran for president against Mike Dukakis. 1988. Bob Dole's he's a hero. He is a hero. Disagree with his politics. Do I disagree with his politics? Yeah, I do. In many ways, but now he's an old man. And he really, honestly, Bob Dole is, it is interesting that we live in a time where we see the departure from the planet of a generation. And we are seeing that with the World War II generation, the greatest generation. They're departing us, and they're going to be gone. They're going to be gone. Now, it may be another 10 years, maybe another 15 years, but it's going to happen pretty soon. My father was a World War II veteran. He was my stepfather. He was old enough to be my grandfather, but he passed away in 1994, and we are witnessing the departure of World War II veterans. They're all in their 90s, essentially. They're all in their 90s. And hundreds. But they're going, and Bob Dole is going to go soon. He's 95. He is 95. George H.W. Bush was 94 years old. It's interesting to see, just from somebody who's been on the planet for just over 50 years, men who were middle-aged suddenly becoming elderly. I am becoming middle-aged. It sucks. But Bob Dole has been wheelchair-bound for a very long time. And at the Capitol Rotunda, where George H.W. Bush lies in state, with some help, he stood. Here's a little bit of that today at the George H.W. Bush funeral. It took everything he could do to stand up and salute. And he sits down. If you haven't had a chance to go to the Capitol Rotunda, it's pretty amazing. I've been. I've not been to a presidential funeral before. But it is an extraordinary event. And it's historical. It's historical. Coming up in a few minutes, I'm going to share CNN making it political, being disrespectful of the president. I'll share that in a second. George Bush's service dog, Scully, joined George H.W. Bush. He was featured in a photo that has become kind of iconic of George H.W. Bush. His casket there and the dog laying before it. We've seen that before, and it's tragic. It's hard to watch when a veteran dies and their service dog is still there. And service dogs are a gift from God. I work with a group called FISH, Friends in Service of Heroes. They're a local group in Kansas City area. A service dog is so important to veterans who are suffering from a variety of things, including PTSD. Nobody ever asked Bob Dole or George H.W. Bush about PTSD. They didn't. Nobody ever asked World War II veterans about their PTSD, but they dealt with it. I've got a nephew with PTSD. I do. I've got a nephew with PTSD. He's 28 years old. I remember when I was in junior high, there was we call it junior high, then it's middle school now. My English teacher, Mr. Ballantyne. He was a World War II veteran. He was at Pearl Harbor. And no other kid asked him about his Pearl Harbor experience, but he was there. He was there when the attack happened. I'm sure he had PTSD, but nobody probably ever bothered to ask him about it. My bus driver was Harold Delaney. I remember at the truck stop, he was the first person I met in first grade, and I was lost because there were 3 buses, and I didn't know which bus I was supposed to be on. I knew I was supposed to be on Joe's bus, and I was crying in first grade. And Harold Delaney was the one of the bus operators, and he came up to me and he says, "I'll get you on Joe's bus." He remembered that day. Even when I was working as a fry cook at the truck stop that he used to come out and have coffee after he retired. Harold Delaney was a member of the troops who stormed Omaha Beach on D-Day. Was driving a bus. Driving a bus. I didn't know when I was a kid he was driving the bus, you know. But I knew after I started working at this truck stop that Harold Delaney, he told me, and he would always uncomfortably kind of laugh, you know, about how he was a scared kid in a foxhole, 19 years old. And he survived. But he never shared like PTSD. PTSD didn't exist for him. But it's a terrible thing. And many veterans need therapy. They need therapy dogs. And trust me, it's a big deal. I work with a guy at my car dealership. Young man, he's like 35 years old. And he's just trying to make a living. And he served 3 tours in Afghanistan. And he's very calm and very cool. And he doesn't share his experience like most veterans. But he went through hell. And he says he does have PTSD. William, he sells cars now. He's a hero. He's a hero. Here is George H.W. Bush's dog visiting him as he lay in state at the Capitol Rotunda. Here he is. Sully. That's Sully. I bet Sully misses that man. And if you saw that man, he would just go bananas. Dogs are a gift from God. They really are. Look at that dog. Wow. God bless him. That's from the UK Daily Mail. All right, you know, this is kind of, I don't want to make this sound morose and everything, and a bummer, but, you know, the guy lived a great life. Many of us will live, and I don't want to pee on your parade if you didn't become the president, because we all, you know, there are some things we're going to do that are going to be exceptional and not so much. But it is kind of a moment to reflect on just life and living and your impact on the world. The Beatles said, all you need is love. And I know this sounds stupid, but really that's it. That's it. When you leave the planet, that's all that matters. All that matters is that those who loved you. It really is. So, sorry. The ruminations of a middle-aged man. CNN panel. Oh, this is good. Could not help themselves. Could not help themselves. Donald Trump comes out. He pays respect to the president. Now, Donald Trump went to a military school, and many people are like, he dodged the draft, and all this stuff. But the man is a major supporter of the military. He is. And Donald Trump is a patriot. Whether you like it or not, he's a patriot. But a CNN panel with Anderson Cooper could not help themselves but be snarky after Donald Trump visited the casket of George H.W. Bush, even though it was unannounced. He did not make a big deal. I'm coming to the casket at 6:30 p.m. on whatever. He did not. He just showed up. But CNN couldn't stand it. And so not only did they have to rip on it, but they had to inject an editorial that is non-existent. I'm going to play that right now. And honestly, I got to tell you, CNN, you disgust me. Here it is. There's a president leaving.
The point David Gergen was making a moment ago that President Trump had sent the Boeing 747, which is known as Air Force One, when the president is aboard, in order to bring President Bush to Washington. That is also tradition, and that so far President Trump is sort of following through on what one traditionally does, putting the Bushes up at Blair House. I don't know if it's an effort to mend fences, given the comments he has made about the family and the presidents over the years.
You know, he's not one to mend fences too readily. I think he's doing this because he feels he has to do it. And I'm also assuming that General Kelly has had a big hand in it. I do know from the Bush family.
You are assuming a lot. You are assuming a lot. When you say you assume, you are assuming based on your opinion. All right? The President of the United States. Hold on one second. Pardon me, had to answer a call from my son. But you are assuming a hell of a lot, okay? This woman is going to assume in the next minute the thoughts of a current president of the United States, respectfully going and visiting a former president lying in state. Donald Trump, for all he is, and I realize he's a pill, and there are times you're just like, but he went to a military school, and I do believe that he honestly loves the U.S. military. He loves the Secret Service. All of these things are very apparent because his actions basically bode them out. But, of course, this doesn't stop a CNN panelist from shredding the president.
Appreciative and think the White House has just bent over backwards, gone to great lengths, been extraordinarily helpful. That said, I can't help but wonder if there was a thought bubble.
This is where it gets really gross. That he is implanting thoughts, or she, I guess, is implanting thoughts into the president as he stands in front of the casket before he salutes. This is sick, guys. This is really sick stuff.
Donald Trump's head just now, what he was thinking as he stood there. I
have to imagine he was thinking, how much longer do I have to stand here?
It's he had to be.
Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your nut that you'd say something like this? I have to imagine he's standing there in front of the casket. How long do I have to be here? It was an unannounced visit. He did not make a grand visit. He did not say he's going to be here at whatever time. He just appeared. Honestly, petty, crass, and stupid.
There, he did it. I think it's interesting he did it because maybe he could have waited to the National Cathedral and then he saluted. It was
all told about a minute and 15 seconds.
It was somewhat theatrical in nature, but I can't.
No, it wasn't. He's the friggin' president of the United States. I'll never forget Bill Clinton. The dedication of the FDR Memorial near the tidal basin in Washington, D.C. This happened 20, I don't know how many years ago. Bill Clinton injured his leg at a hot tub party at Greg Norman's house, and he got those crutches that Jerry's kids wear on either arm because he wanted to be dramatic about the injury that that affected him. And so he had a photo op at the FDR Memorial where he was standing there with his crutches like he was afflicted by polio like FDR. It was stupid. It was unimaginably stupid. This president doesn't do that crap. And he didn't show up to do this. He didn't show up to use this as a photo op like Bill Clinton would have.
This is very comfortable for him, these moments, and I think it is going to be fascinating to watch the cathedral on Wednesday and how he interacts with these other presidents. And
why is it going to be fascinating? Why can't the man just go to the cathedral? You're literally injecting your own editorial comments and expecting people to believe this is Donald Trump's thought process. I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say. By the way, if you ever get a chance to go to the National Cathedral, I used to live about 2 miles from there, and I would go to that cathedral for solace. It is beautiful. It is glorious. If you get the chance to go, dear God in heaven, go. The amazing thing about the cathedral is it's not only the National Cathedral, but there are praying stations around the cathedral everywhere. And downstairs, there's even a mini cathedral. It is glorious. I remember the last time I went, and I spent hours going through that cathedral. Go to the National Cathedral and pray and stop and pray. It is glorious. It really is. It's absolutely glorious. Do it if you can. I miss living there. I miss living in Washington, D.C. I really do. Miss my friends there. All righty, let's move on to other stuff. I'm sure there are other things to talk about. Let's do it, shall we? Ticket prices to see former President Bill Clinton and Hillary speak have gone as low as $7. Okay, seriously. This is like a top-tier Harlem Globetrotters in like Springfield, Illinois. That's how bad it is. $7 to see the Clintons. This is wow. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton failed. They've been touring the U.S. and Canada. Dates stretching into the mid-2019 year. Tickets currently range from $7 to $1,062, depending on the seating quality. Scalpers are trying to get as much as $500 a ticket, but considering the ticket sales, even at a discount, it may be a risky wager to find someone desperate enough to pay who is simultaneously unaware of how cheap the tickets are going for. Michelle Obama is on tour of her own. Her book, event tickets, $300 to $2,500. Honestly, they have gone nuts on the ticket pricing thing. Remember, like in the 90s when the Eagles were on tour, it was like $250 a ticket. Now you've got politicians thinking that their tickets are worth $500. Are you out of your mind? Out of your mind. We got a couple other stories I'm going to get to here in just a few minutes with regard to politics that are kind of interesting. Oh, yeah. Censorship on social media and pages like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Dennis Prager, talk show host, talks about that in a few minutes. We'll get to that in a few, kids. Thousands of Republican emails were hacked by a foreign agent who targeted top officials in a party massive cyber breach secret during the election of 2018. Yeah. Thousands of Republican campaign committee emails were hacked. During the 2018 election, the party kept it secret. A couple of reasons why. They didn't want to say, about the attack because they thought that it would expose those behind the attack and they would go silent and they wouldn't be able to go after them. Pretty interesting. 4 senior aides at the National Republican Congressional Committee, the Republicans' House campaign arm, had their emails surveyed for months by an outside intruder, according to Politico. Top House leaders like Paul Ryan, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Majority Whip Steve Scalise were not informed of the attack. The intrusion was detected in April. Now, where is the real election hacking? We know that Hillary Clinton was in bed with Russians. We know that Hillary Clinton got $150 million donated to her foundation by Russian oligarchs before the 2016 election. Why? Because they wanted to buy influence. We know that this Russian collusion story with Donald Trump is a distraction from the real collusion which happened between Hillary Clinton, the Democrat Party, and Russia. And if you don't believe me, do your freaking research. How about you read? You guys who watch my show, you read. You pay attention. The real collusion happened between Russia and Hillary effing Rodham Clinton. Officials wouldn't say who was behind the attack, but it said to privately believe it was a foreign agent, Russia. I just added that. They also said they did not reveal the attack's existence because they were afraid it would alert the hacker, and they knew of it, and they were looking at that person's identity. Representative Tom Emmer of Minnesota said that he was only briefed of the attack on Monday. Yeah. Republicans lost 40 seats in the 2018 election. Can we blame it on Russian hacking? Can we blame it, guys? Can we blame it on Russian hacking? I think so. Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, who is dumb as Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, got 4 Pinocchios for posting a claim on Twitter about out-of-control Pentagon spending. She supports Bernie Sanders for Medicaid for all. That estimate for that program is $32 trillion over 10 years. Okay? On Sunday, she tweeted that Pentagon accounting errors could help pay for part of the coverage. She said $21 trillion of Pentagon financial transactions could not be traced, documented, or explained. $21 trillion in Pentagon accounting errors. Medicare for all costs $32 trillion. That means 66% of Medicare for all could have been funded already by the Pentagon, and that's before our premiums. Now, she's wrong. Washington Post said that $21 trillion is not one big pot of dormant money collecting dust somewhere. It's the sum of all transactions, both inflows and outflows, for which the Defense Department did not have adequate documentation. Putting the number in context, the newspaper pointed out that according to the Congressional Budget Office, total defense spending from 1998 to 2015 was $9 trillion. Only $9 trillion. And it estimates $7 trillion in spending on defense from 2019 to 2028. You ready for the big money here? The defense of the country versus Alexandria Cortez. Her estimates on healthcare spending. Completely defunding the military for the next decade would yield only 1/5 of the $32 trillion that Alexandria Cortez wants to spend on, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez wants to spend on healthcare. Basically, not only the last 20 years of defense spending, but also all of the defense spending in the history of the country would be spent on the next 10 years of her healthcare program. How about that? Spokesman for Ocasio-Cortez tried to explain it in an email to the Washington Post. The point, I think, was more about how we care so little about how do you pay for it. When we were talking about war and military spending, her spokesman wrote in an email, it's only when we are talking about investing in the physical and economic well-being of our citizenry that we become concerned with the price tags. The newspaper concluded, that was a swing and a miss. Yeah, big time. The U.S. Census confirms that 63% of non-citizens on welfare, 63% of non-citizens are on welfare. A majority of non-citizens, including those with legal green card rights, are tapping into welfare programs set up to help poor and alien Americans. So those of you who think that the caravan is here to work and to embrace the American dream, we already know that's bullcrap. Embracing the American dream, that's bullcrap. It really is. They don't care. It's about work. Okay, it's not about asylum. It's not about I'm going to die if I live in my country. It's not. Otherwise, they would stop at Mexico and say, we're going to stay here. It's bullcrap. Non-citizens, 63% are on welfare. 4.6 million households. Now it grows to 70% for those who are here 10 years or more. So the longer people stay here illegally, the more they collect welfare. 2014, 63% of households headed by a non-citizen reported that they used at least one welfare program, compared to 35% of native-headed households. These are dreamers. Dreamers. Welfare use drops to 58% for non-citizen households and 30% for native households if cash payments from the Earned Income Tax Credit are not counted as welfare. Okay, what am I trying to get to here? People who are coming here want the gravy train. Same thing's going on in Europe. Same thing. Same thing is going on in Europe. Oh, Al Sharpton, selling his life story rights for $531,000 to his own charity. National Action Network agreed to pay him $531,000 for his life story rights for a 10-year period. His charity. The document does not indicate when Sharpton, who is a president of the organization, gets the cash, which is above and beyond the $244,000 he already pulled down in compensation from the group in 2017. He said, what does that have to do with anything? Well, it has something to do with everything. He's selling his life story now. Listen to this. This is really funny. Sharpton said that the assets were appraised and the movie deals alone could bring in at least triple what the foundation purchase of his rights would be. Okay, so he believes that the movie deals alone. Who wants to see the Al Sharpton movie? Anybody? Anybody want to see the Al Sharpton movie? No, not really. Linda Sugan, a Fordham University law professor, says, when I see this kind of thing, it just makes my eyes roll back because there's so much potential for funny business. And this is what Al Sharpton has been about. Daniel Borshoff, the head of Charity Watch, said the transaction would have been a lot cleaner if Sharpton sold the rights himself to a production company, then donated any profit in excess of $531,000 to his National Action Network. He's a crooked POS. Okay? The nonprofit took in $6.3 million in revenue last year, up from $5.8 the year before. Sharpton hosts Politics Nation on MSNBC that nobody watches. Managed to pay off a chunk of his tax debt to the state and feds last year. He paid $172,000 to the state, but still owes $736,000 in personal income tax and taxes for 3 of his companies to the New York state government. Nice guy. Let's move on. Danielle Moody, talking about the 2016 midterms and African-American voters and white voters. And she's a racist. She's a rabid racist. Here is her analysis of the 2016 elections, and I will comment as we go along.
Here's the thing. What Democrats need to stop doing is stop pandering to the white working class as if they're the only ones that are part of the working class. Okay.
Democrats need to stop pandering to African-American voters. Democrats don't pander to white American voters. The Democrat Party has written me, and if you're a white person, middle class, they've written us off. That's painfully obvious. The only pandering that's going on is toward minorities, transgendered non-cisgendered people in a certain economic class.
This is the problem. When we get into identity politics, and we were told after the 2016 election...
And the Democrat Party is all about identity politics, by the way. There is no party in the history of mankind that has been more into identity politics than the Democrat Party, particularly in the last, I don't know, year. Actually, I'd say in the last 8 years.
Talking about identity politics, that's what lost us the election. No, what lost us the election is constantly pandering to a class that isn't on your side, that isn't the future of this country.
Here's where she gets all racisty.
Isn't the future of the party. What Black Americans have shown time and time again is that they are the backbone of the Democratic Party and yet receive none of the investment from it. Right. So the idea is this. Let us stop pretending that white women and white men are going to save us.
She is a racist.
From ourselves. They're not going to. They're always going to vote with their whiteness. That's the reality. Right.
Okay. I don't vote with my whiteness. I don't vote with my whiteness. And pardon about the feedback there. I've got a little headphone issue. I don't vote with my whiteness. I've never voted with my whiteness. And I find what you're saying to be quite disgusting. It's not about voting with your whiteness. It's about voting for what is right and wrong. Voting for what is important for the country. It's not about voting for your whiteness. It's not 1968. It's not 1863. I don't know who this goofball is, but she needs to be relieved from her duty at CNN or MSNBC.
That's the reality that we're living in.
That's true, although those margins matter a lot.
They matter.
Okay. Obviously. No idea what she's talking about. We are more divided racially than we've ever been. I would venture to say probably since the Civil War. And it's a shame because the country has changed. The country has changed. Dear God in heaven, if you don't realize the country has changed, you're high. I grew up in a time, the 1970s and early 80s, where we didn't think about it. We're a great American melting pot. We didn't think about it. But there are those who use race, socioeconomical, sexual differences to tear us apart. It really is amazing. It really is amazing. We do not have black people sitting in the back of buses anymore. We don't. We don't have black people staging protests at the counter at Woolworths so they can eat with white people. It doesn't exist. But somehow the United States is worse than ever, according to some. And I got to tell you, I'm a little, I don't know. It really bugs me because my son's 19 years old and he's at college. And he's never thought about race before. He's never discriminated against anyone before. And I haven't either, by the way. I've never discriminated against somebody before because of their color. I don't give a crap about color. But my son's at school and now he is, he is a white privileged kid who's paying for his own school. He's white privileged. Dennis Prager's got a show. He works, he's a syndicated talk show host, and he's a good guy, and he does some touring with Adam Carolla, and kind of like the Boomer Gen Xer show, conservative guy. He's got a thing called Prager University. He's created quite a brand with regard to, conservatism. And what you don't realize is that Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they've all launched a silent war on conservatism. They have. Now, my show was seen on Liberty One TV and its affiliated Facebook pages. And the Facebook pages were all taken down about a month and a half, 2 months ago, because it was an election coming up and Mark Zuckerberg decided to kill conservative publishers. And you want to fight with me? Call me. Carson on the radio, gmail.com. Write me, because they did. They tore us apart. They did, because of our political beliefs before the election. That's just the way it is. Dennis Prager has been a victim of this too. And it is a victim of this too. And it wouldn't be bad if Facebook said, we are a left-leaning organization and we are only here to promote left-leaning causes. If that were fine, then we'd never get the chance to join them. We would not take the opportunity to join these organizations, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We wouldn't have done it if we knew that our political ideology and our political ideals would be quashed. We wouldn't have. But unfortunately, Facebook allowed a lot of people to invest a lot of money in reaching a lot of people like Liberty One TV and its affiliated Facebook pages, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then suddenly decided before an election to get rid of them. Here's Dennis Prager talking about his experience with the big media, obviously Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, at all.
We have had about 60 of our 400 videos at various times on the restricted list. Mm-hmm. They include such terrible things as a history of the Korean War, or one that I happen to have given on are human beings more valuable than animals. There's a real porno example for you.
That's a real tough one.
Oh, that's a real tough one. Andrew Roberts, the great British historian, gave a course on why Churchill saved Western civilization. That's on the restricted list. If it's pro-West, pro-America, pro-religion, pro-Israel, it is almost always placed on the restricted list.
And which side of the political equation do all of these things match with? The left.
Which means that if you have any anti-porn filters in your house, you can't even see our videos. Libraries can't.
So they are saying that, for instance, Twitter, YouTube, whatnot, are saying that political discourse, conservative political thought is pornography.
See them. Schools can't see them if they have any of these filters, and we can't monetize them. So Peter, it's very serious.
It's a fine line. Companies do have a right in a free society,
no.
And I don't want to.
Not if they lead people to believe they can express themselves freely.
Free speech, more speech, but when you're making editorial decisions and you're that big, it's a little chilling. But maybe the answer is free market. Maybe the answer is to create a competitor.
Oh, and that brings me to my next thought. Spreely. SPREELY.com, Spreely.com. That is a new social networking site that my friend Terry Littlepage came up with after his network was killed by Facebook. SPREELY.com. Speak freely. Those of you on the left, you can join. You will not be shadow banned because of your political discourse. Those on the right, you will not be shadows banned because of political discourse. Now, you might be booted because you're a dick. If you want to incite violence or anything like that, it doesn't matter what side of the political equation you're from, you're going to be going bye-bye. But your political views and your freedom of expression will not be subjected to that. Spreely.com, SPREELY.com. Time for me to go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. God bless George H.W. Bush. He was not my favorite president. He was not. But he lived an extraordinary life. And I want you, that's really stupid. I was going to say, I want you to achieve the extraordinary life. That's really cheesy. So I'm not going to do that. You know what? Keep kicking ass, taking names. God bless you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and I will see you again very soon.
To the Rob Carson Show.
See ya.
Friend him on Facebook at Carson Show, on Twitter at Rob Carson, and on Instagram, I think Facebook and Twitter are enough for now.